Budget and Finance Committee. Clint, and I'll ask you to do engineering at the same time, so you don't have to get up and sit down and get up and sit down.
These will be very short.
And
Budget finance met on Tuesday, May the 10th. The main item on the agenda was budget. The engineering committee essentially received a number of updates on projects and had a long discussion about one particular potential project that we'll find out more about later. Neither committee had any action items related to items on your agenda today. So there is nothing.
Okay, cool. Communication and customer service. Cynthia, you or me, one or the other. Yeah. I don't believe we.
Yeah, we're currently in the process of discussing some very high important items and communicating with our customers and with the community. We're talking about community outreach, actually recruiting to get some of the seats filled for our communications and customer service committee. Discussed the avocado festival and things that went well and where we can improve on those things, and opportunities where we can reach out to the community and make more of a connection. And actually have had some discussion with staff about their desire to communicate and be part of the community in a greater level. We're also talking about our cross connection and backflow program, ways that we can communicate what that program is about, and advantages and disadvantages to those things. And so we're spending a lot of time communicating about communications and talking about the shutoffs that are going on right now, ways that we can assist our customers and be as much of a help as we can be in these types of situations. And looking for, again, more opportunities to make an impact on the community. And we're going to continue to discuss those in the next week.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I don't have anything to add. You covered everything that I have in my notes. Presentations, staff analysis presentation, staffing analysis presentation.
Carlene will give you your annual look at what we're looking at, the staffing levels and forecast and endless data for your perusal.
Fortunately, some of the data and graphs I went over last month, so those will just skip over quickly because you've seen it once already. I'm just waiting for the Ahmed to get it set up here.
We have an attack fly in here.
We do.
Yeah, there's one fly.
Been in here since closed session.
He's making sure he distributes his frustration.
That's right. It's on everybody's head.
Okay, so the goal of the staffing analysis that's going forward without my presentation today. I'm going to kind of review some of the things I talked about last month, the overtime, turnover rates, protected turnover, some of the employee survey results, and the labor that has been booked to CIP versus operations budget. I took kind of a deep dive, especially in construction and engineering for that. And then I'm going to give a high level overview of our current structure, demographics of the workforce, retirement eligibilities, the staffing continuity plan, and the critical position inventory. And then looking to the future, what we need to do in order to prepare for the upcoming retirements and increase capacity for CIP projects in engineering and construction, and the opportunity that we have to insource some of those to collect more data on what it really takes to execute those projects so that we can do a proper cost analysis for future budget cycles. So this I went over last month. This is just kind of a recap that overtime remains high for the second fiscal year in a row. We're looking in with the staff level management on what we can do to mitigate some of those. Some of the recommendations that I have today will address some of that, and some of it won't address the total, but will help mitigate the average per person that you see here that I talked about last time. So especially in the area of construction. So I looked at the primary sources of overtime, and there is a lot that's just for routine work. Standby is about 25%, and emergencies are about 20%. CIP was almost 20%. Most of that was West Up, but not all of it. But then when you look at the department level, it's varies quite widely by department. So again, I went over this last month. Construction overtime is about 50%. Emergency response to leaks, 25% standby. So that number of that 3,000, that about 2,000 or so of that would remain regardless of staffing levels, because it's emergency response, after hours response. So regardless of how many people are on the team, they still have to respond after hours. But we could potentially reduce the average per person. So this is when I looked at the time in the construction department, they had booked a total of 26,666 hours. And this is in the last 12 months. So I did May to May, or April to April, the most recent 12 months at the time I pulled the data. So that's the equivalent of 13 full-time employees. Guess what? Construction doesn't have 13 full-time employees. So they're using staff from other departments, and they're using a high amount of overtime for that. So borrowed staff was almost 5,000 hours for the year of time that was booked from other departments to the construction projects. Yes.
Is that 5,000 hours part of the 26,000?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So the West Up project was about 31% of the total hours last year, and other CIP projects was 14%. And again, 23% was emergency repairs. So that's much less than just the overtime, because this is total hours, not just overtime. Department overhead is things like paid breaks, holiday time, PTO, things that's just, sort of non-productive hours that are paid to staff. And then department operations is things like admin time, doing time cards, attending meetings, and all of a lot of it's super, but no, employees have a lot too. They have, 10 to 15% for all those other categories as well. Attending all hands meetings, that kind of thing. And then general repair and maintenance, that's not emergency repairs, was actually only about 6%.
Yeah, so on this chart, I think it's instructive as WSUP goes away. We want to get the CIP and the blue general repair and maintenance charts bigger, because now WSUP took a lot of what our people would have been doing, installing more PR stations and things like that over the last year and a half. But we want to make sure that we expand those other two and keep the other pie on the below or left as small as we can.
Mhm.
So that's kind of the takeaway.
But,
Right.
But the
So-
reality is if you run the numbers, there's roughly 6,000 hours of overtime. If I
Not
take
all
my-
that-
No, because the borrowed staff time isn't all overtime. So that's staff from valve maintenance or
if I
meters.
Come back up and looked at total book time and 13 full-time equivalents.
Uh-huh.
Essentially, that's 2,000 hours per
Roughly, yeah.
full-time
Roughly.
equivalent,
Mhm.
and you only have 10 staff, so
Mhm.
you have 3 full-time equivalents overtime
Well, we took,
that you're covering.
they took. yeah,
Well, it's not all overtime though, but yes, there's 3 full-time equivalents that are pulling from somewhere else. Some of that's overtime, some of that's from other
They'll grab
departments.
somebody, they're gonna leak or something, they'll grab somebody in the other department to come drive loads or help them out.
But,
Mhm.
but transferring it over to your pie chart, if what's up goes away, that's only a third, so you're still 4,000 hours.
We're
uh,
still
full-time.
over, yes. Mhm. So, and this is the engineering department. This is their current labor distribution. If you look at the amount of time spent, and I broke this down by position because, they each have different roles, and so they're spending different ratios of time on what they're doing. But on average, it's about 45% is for general department and operations and administration. 15% for overhead, 12% supporting developer projects, and about 27% on CIP projects. But if you look by position, we've got project managers are averaging about 48% on CIP, department manager 21, engineer 13, inspectors a little higher, and the engineering technician is at 19%. So as you'll see a little bit later, I've got a similar analysis for if we were to add the additional position that I talked about recommending last month. So when I look at, this is for the CIP time for construction. I apologize, I had these out of order. So when I looked at the CIP time that was booked in construction after I take out the What's Up project, these were the major projects that were booked to the construction department. And so we use this information in order to calculate sort of an estimate of how many labor hours per linear feet of new pipe installation and how many hours we anticipate, needing per new pressure station to be installed. So Robert and I kind of looked at the total hours, and there were a couple of pressure stations here, and he's like, well, this one was a little bit more challenging. This one is a little less challenging. Let's average those together. So that's how we came up with those estimates. Our turnover remains pretty steady. Our 30-year average is still 13% per year, but we are trending down. The most recent 5-year average is 12%, which is, a very slight downwards trend. We are still seeing the inverse correlation between unemployment rate in general and our turnover rate, which is completely expected.
Is the turnover rate due to retirement?
It's a combination, and I actually have a chart in here that breaks that down, I think. So this is our turnover rate, our voluntary turnover rate. So this is the quit rates. It ranged from 0 to 10.5% for the last 5 years. It did increase in the first half of 2021. Or actually in 2021, but we're still well below the national average. And the national
solid blue line on the bottom.
Yeah, the dotted line is the Bureau of Labor Statistics national average. So we're still well below that. And then for utilities, we're well below that as well. So we're doing very well if you're comparing us to other averages. So looking at this is our current organizational chart with the 5 department managers. There, as you can see, there's a lot under Tracy and Robert. Tracy has more reporting directly to her. Robert has the larger groups with the supervisors reporting directly to him. Oops. So this is Tracy's. So she has the 4 positions plus 2 supervisors reporting directly to her. And then Robert has the 3 supervisors and the fleet mechanic reporting directly to him. So this is the generational mix of the workforce. We have gradually over the past few years shifted to having more millennials in our workforce and fewer baby boomers as they gradually retire. And new applicants tend to be more in the millennial or Gen X generation. Even some Gen X's are almost at the retirement window if they've been in CalPERS for a long time. So compared to the national workforce, the district has a little bit higher on the older millennials, Gen X, and boomers. Why isn't this moving? Can you help me out, Ahmed? Okay. So our retirement eligibility, then the number of employees not eligible is growing, which is a good thing. But at the same time, the number of employees who are eligible for full 2.5% retirement immediately is also growing. So that's something that we're acutely aware of and trying to prepare for. Again, this was presented last month, but this is the critical position inventory. So this is how we identified the positions that we need to really be focusing on our knowledge transfer plans. and particularly the engineering technician and the technical services lead, or which is the title for our electrician. Okay, so looking towards the future and what we need in future years. The turnover drivers will be retirement. So this is kind of looking forward on what we expect for retirements in the next few years versus non-retirements. I think this relates to the question that Director Mack had, as well as what we think the unemployment rate is likely to be, and our overall turnover trend line. So when I'm looking at, what are our staffing needs going to be, I'm looking really closely at these projected retirement numbers because those are the ones that we can most easily plan for. So last month I talked about 3 primary drivers of staffing needs, which is the high priority positions for the knowledge transfer, the need to staff the projects related to the water wholesale efficiency project, and the fact that we continue to have high overtime. We also have the finance manager spending more time on external affairs, attending conferences, and other projects that is creating some capacity constraints. And we could have better attention probably paid to some direct reports if there was another level of supervision available when she's traveling or on another project. And the part-time HR assistant is at maximum capacity. We can't increase hours and still have her at part-time status. So her duties have evolved significantly since she was hired about 3.5 years ago. And she is qualified to do much more related to our training programs, recruiting, and benefits administration than she currently has the time capacity to do. So the solutions that we're recommending is, last month I talked about adding 2 utility workers in construction, and that recommendation has not changed, but we have found a way to move 1 headcount from meters into construction. We had someone unexpectedly leave the meters department, so we plan to refill that in construction. So we would only need to add 1 additional headcount in order to fill these 2 positions for the next budget cycle.
One thing, I just saw it here again, so we get the wholesale water efficiency project. That's the water wholesale.
Oh, okay, thank you.
I assume that's what it's in.
Good differentiation. Yeah.
Well, it's pedantic.
Okay, so this is another needs analysis for construction. When I took a look at the CIP labor needs for the projects that we'd like to accomplish in-house over the next couple of years, the pressure stations taking about 670 hours each, with a target production of about 8 installations per year, we would need 5,300 hours per year. The pipeline replacements at 0.74 labor hours per linear foot. And we've got about 7,300 linear feet of pipelines that we could install in the next couple of years. So that would be 5,400 hours. So with our current staffing levels, we have the capacity for about 68% of the planned in-house CIP projects. And if we were to add those 2 FTEs to construction, we would have the capacity for about 93% of those projects. So that's the analysis for what we think that would look like. It would reduce overtime somewhat. We're hoping it would reduce overtime. If you'll recall, there was over 3,000 hours of overtime for the department. So this would bring it down, we think, to about 2,800. But more importantly, it would reduce the average per person to help mitigate burnout from
50 hours a year.
Yeah. So that's what we're recommending, to add the 2 FTEs to construction. 1 would be pulled from meters and 1 would be an additional headcount.
Yeah, when we were doing our survey work last time and when we got voted in on that UT thing, that was one of the challenges the workforce, even though we got really high ratings, is that there's so much overtime that it tends to burn them out and their work-life balance gets disrupted. So at a certain point, you can keep doing that for a while, but after a while, people say, boy, I'm gonna go somewhere where I only have to do 230 hours overtime a year and not 50 more.
Mm-hmm.
So you're recommending adding 2 FTEs to construction, but you're taking one out of meters, so the net increase in employment is just one FTE.
Correct. For construction. So, sorry, this clicker's a little bit delayed. So adding an analyst position in engineering would allow us to have a significant overlap for knowledge transfer with the engineering technician. It would also help offload administration and analysis for other positions like the project managers and the engineer and the department manager. And this is one that we think could be a permanent headcount increase, but we'd at a minimum like to do it until the engineering technician retires. So we have more data to do the analysis later to go back to the board and determine whether that should be a permanent headcount
When
increase.
do you anticipate the engineer technician?
Well, we look at anticipated,
Isn't
we
it
know
weird,
how
Delia, when
many,
people talk?
she's in the room, so.
Yeah.
We look at the number of years in CalPERS, the retirement eligibility, and, you know, we make our best estimate, but we do think it's definitely time to start the knowledge transfer process and have an overlap. And at the same time,
Say,
build.
Delia, is that fair to say? Okay,
Mhm.
just want to make sure.
Don't let us put you on the spot.
Yeah, I know.
And what we really want is to have this time for the knowledge transfer, as well as to gather data on how this additional position will really impact the labor distribution within the department and how much it could increase the capacity for CIP projects and developer work. And I have a slide for that next.
She knows the question I was going to answer.
Yes. Okay, so this is what we think the projected engineering labor distribution would look like with the analyst position. So the technician, this says technician here. After the technician's retirement, we would be replacing the technician with an admin assistant because the analyst will have picked up a lot of the more complex tasks from that position.
The analyst be then moved to
The analyst would be an analyst.
then who's taking over?
We would either replace it with an administrative assistant or not replace it, depending on, you know, what the next couple of years shows in terms of.
So Delia has been
Increased
working here forever
capacity.
and she does a lot of extremely complex things. I think she practices law almost as much as I do sometimes. She reviews a lot of stuff. But yeah, and so but it's hard, it's a hard thing to replace, you know, when you with your administrative assistant. But we also when we have a unicorn position like that, we want to bring in somebody who can do the higher level stuff, but also offload some of the stuff for the project managers and whatnot.
Mhm.
And then, but there are always administrative tasks just for filing and paperwork and things like that, that you don't need the person to read it, understand it. They're just like, hey, this needs to get stamped, dated, moved around, that sort of stuff. You hire at a lower level to handle those tasks. But
Yeah.
what Carly is saying is we bring in it now, try to very carefully look at what the range of tasks are and then say, oh yeah, there is room.
So
Or is
tech-
not room to bring somebody at a lower level
Mhm.
and try to save the money.
Right, the technician currently performs a wide range of very complex tasks to all the administrative work for the department. And so we would really kind of design the analyst role to pick up a lot of the complex tasks from that position, as well as some of the analysis work from the department managers, or a department manager, project managers, engineer, et cetera.
Is
Yeah.
the pay similar?
I haven't done the
Okay.
comp analysis yet, but it would probably be an exempt level position, so it would probably be a couple of pay grades higher. But also it wouldn't be eligible for overtime, so in terms of budget, it would be similar. So we believe that adding this would help us increase our CIP capacity by about 900 hours per year, which is an increase of 26% of the amount of hours we're currently spending in that department. Our developer capacity by almost 400 hours per year, which is about 27% of what we're currently spending on developer projects. But it would only decrease the department overhead and other and department operations hours by about 10% of the hours, we believe. So we're just shifting some specific types of work from those other positions onto the analyst position. So the other staffing recommendations were the temporary addition of the electronics technician, which is what we call our electrician, what we would replace our lead as. We can defer this recommendation to the next fiscal year. So we're actually not putting that in this year's budget, and we think we can split it between 2 fiscal years, starting with fiscal 23-24 for that 1 year.
How many
overlap.
years is he gonna have in when he retires?
Well, he's at 30, 32 or 33 years now, so that would give him about 34. So, so we are still going to be making that recommendation. We want to continue to communicate with the board that that's our intent, but it wouldn't be for this fiscal year, it'd be for a future fiscal year. And then we're recommending to change the reporting structure in finance to move a couple of positions from reporting directly to the finance manager to report to the senior accountant. And that would provide closer attention to staff when the finance managers isn't involved in more external affairs and conferences and things like that. And it's a growth opportunity for the senior accountant as well. And then convert the part-time HR assistant to a full-time HR specialist position. Again, this is to cover a lot of the additional duties that have been added to that role since it was hired 3.5 years ago. And there's a lot more we could do with full-time capacity. We also found ways to cut our department operations budget to offset the cost of making that position full-time almost completely, right, Tracy?
Mhm.
Or more than completely.
Yeah, I think you guys actually have a reduction.
Yeah. So what we'd like from the board today is feedback so that we can implement, your comments into the actual budget document. So the official action that the board will be taking will be approving the budget that has these staffing changes recommended. So for today, we'd like, to answer your questions, get your feedback and thoughts so that we know what to include in the budget proposal next month.
So you'd like these hires to be effective after July 1?
Yes, for the next budget. Mhm.
Carleen, what's the total headcount change?
Thank you. The total head count change would be, 0.25 for HR, 1 for construction and 1 analyst. So 2.25.
And the analyst one would be potentially temporary, depending how that goes, but the
But also
real goal is that our CIP, what we've got in our hopper, we need the boots on the ground to implement.
Yep.
I know that's something that our committee has
And-
made very clear to us over
Right.
and over.
And it'll give us the time to gather the data both for construction and engineering on how much did it really increase our capacity to deliver on those CIP projects and support developers.
Are we still looking at moving more CIP projects internally?
That's one of the things that bringing these construction guys in, I know I just signed the PO for, I think about 2,000 feet of pipeline for them to start laying pipe, us taking a good look at what it's going to take. And our early steps show that we can be cost competitive and beat the cost of hiring out contractors, especially at prevailing wage. And so should that pan out through this, then we go. Now, if it turns out we can't, then as attrition happens, we can scale back down. But we gotta, right now, I think we talked about last month, and I know it happened over in Palo Mesa, where we're working on a project. Oh, that crew's got to leave to go do a leak. And then, they're working. It's so hard to get continuity. We want to get a crew that Robert can say, you guys are doing this project and these other guys will handle anything that else comes up. And then we try to look at if they can just focus on and concentrate. I believe we can cut the cost about in half. The goal is to take whatever CIP money we have and build more feet per dollar as we can, because the bidding environment has been insane, as we all know, and the travails of designing and bidding and constructing these things in the contracting business is crazy.
Yeah, one of the challenges that we have is that, we barely have enough staff to keep up with all the leaks and everything as it is. And if we want to continue, if we want to gather that data to do a real cost analysis, the amount of time it takes to perform that CIP work will be more than we would need in the future if they continue to have to be pulled off in order to respond to leaks and things like that.
How long does it take to bring a new FTE on board?
Well, in construction, about 40 days.
Well, that's to get them in the door. Obviously, when we bring some new people on, we'll integrate them into other crews and take our experienced guys on these other ones. But it takes, Robert, what does it take to get it, once HR hands them off to you?
It depends when we hire them. If we hire them with a commercial license already, maybe they have some experience. So that's what we just did interviews yesterday, actually.
Monday.
Um,
Mhm.
So it varies on who the candidates are. But for the purpose, like Tom was saying, for the construction crew to do new lines, though, that's gonna be our more seasoned employees, right? We're not gonna put a new guy out there because his head's just gonna be spinning trying to figure out what to do next.
We
Well,
hire, a lot of the candidates don't already have the class A and there's a 6-month permit, time period. So that's a minimum of 6 months before they can drive one of our class A vehicles.
What is the total gross fiscal impact?
I'm going to be going through the impacts of this and all our other assumptions in the next presentation,
Okay,
but I can detail that one out too. I don't have it detailed out for this presentation. But I
My
can pull
my
it.
only concern or question, that's probably unanswerable is two FTEs sufficient? If we're going to start bringing construction more inside and we still have the same number of leaks, we're going to be essentially chasing with more overtime. And it might
Mhm.
behoove us to consider bumping a little on the FTEs and construction.
Well, I think that this is gonna be a stepwise approach. This year we'll do that and see how, because Robert says if I can get a couple more guys, I can isolate them from the leaks. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
He
And
can
not-
isolate one crew. Ideally, in the future, we'd have 2 crews
Crews,
full-time
yeah.
laying pipe.
Yeah.
But what we want to do is make sure we can get enough resources to handle the day-to-day leaks. Even when somebody's on vacation or whatnot, you're not just strapped. And then put those guys to work them for a year, see what kind of production we can get out of them. And, it's going to increase as they get better at it.
Okay.
And even I was talking to Issa when they were doing the one up in by the Rainbow Camp. The first 2 days they were out there laying pipe, they were getting a certain amount per day, but by the end of that project, they were getting 3 times that in per day. It's just a matter of them learning
Getting
their
in the
processes,
grill.
getting in
Right.
the groove, and the team starting to work together, like, not just bumping into each other. And once they get experience, they'll get more efficient at it. And then so we'll have the Gird Road pipeline coming up and the Wilt Road.
Wilt
pipeline.
Road, and then we have, I don't know, probably at least 10 more smaller projects that are 1,000 feet or less.
So we're gonna start knocking those out, checking the data, and if it proves out the way our early results are, then we say, okay, yeah, this looks good. Let's. No, it's part of what we talked earlier about adaptive management. We want to make a forecast, measure, monitor, see how we do, compare it against our forecast, and then have a decision tree. Hey, is what we're forecasted coming true? If yes, then we can expand. If no, then can it be fixed? If no, then we go back to the old way. But prevailing wage laws have made it such that anybody who hires contractors to do prevailing wage work knows.
So the fiscal impact for each a new construction employee at an entry level hire is about 90,000 per year. But some of that we plan to charge to CIP. And so some of that will be charged to the CIP projects. So
It may not be that
wouldn't all be in the
individual, but somebody
operations.
else,
Right.
Like I said, and I don't disagree with the approach. It's just the thing that's nagging in the back of my mind is if we're increasing our construction allocation in terms of labor and only adding X and everything else is being the same, we may be underestimating X. And we
Mhm.
need to be Y. So,
Yeah.
But
I-
we can always do a mid-year correction.
Yeah, I mean, if we
things
look
like
at it and say,
that.
yes.
So, get the program going.
Yeah, once we
check the
do
data.
a few of these projects, we'll be able to recalculate what our estimate of 670 hours per pressure station and 0.74 per linear labor hours
Yeah.
per linear foot of new pipelines. And if we see after 6 months, oh, you know what, those numbers are very different, we can recalibrate
one way or the
our
other.
our needs with that same sort of
Okay.
analysis that I did. Mhm.
I'm comfortable.
I also, when we bring on this small number, let's say it doesn't turn out the way we want. If you look at the forecasted, attrition rate, it's easy for that to go down. If you bring in a whole bunch, then you're stuck with them for a while while that comes down. I'm just a little more,
It's a balancing act.
Yeah, so-
To be the
Recognizing-
conservative approach.
take a stepwise approach that, we did some first tests, it looked good, but the data, the N and the sample number is very small. We want to get more Ns in there not more ends,
Make
but
sure
a
your
larger end.
assumptions are correct. before
And
you
then-
ramp it up.
And then go, okay, we feel super comfortable. And the team organization will learn a lot just about, hey, where are we doing laydown? Hey, how is our procurement going to get these pipe and materials? And there's a whole series of other project management structures that come along with this that's going to lean on more on engineering to help out project management, things like that. So we got to make sure before I hire that many people that we have a structure here to be able to effectively utilize them.
Yep.
And so we've got to build that capacity.
Ahmed, can you change the presentations, please? Thank you. So now we're going to look at the impact of all of our assumptions on the operating budget. So we have implemented all of the changes that Carleen presented into the operating budget. Look for Ahmed to hit play here.
That's a great photo.
We,
It's the second
Where-
time.
That
I've
little
done that.
excavator's in the small.
or did you
hole
try
now.
pointing it?
It's gonna go deeper.
Yeah.
There we go.
It's gone even deeper.
I have a photo from 2012 on a different project where we did the same thing.
It's really cool. It's a
It's
cool
cool.
picture.
Good.
So we've bumped up our projection for this year's actuals. The blue line is the actuals and then that very last number is the projected sales. So we think we're going to hit a little closer to 15,000. We should have that. We should know exactly what that's going to be by the next budget meeting. So,
We have 2 months left in the fiscal.
well, we have like 5 weeks. So
5 weeks, yeah.
we're,
I was going to say the governor's restrictions won't have a major impact.
Yeah.
well, they said they had the highest March sales after he put out those restrictions. So we are still budgeting at 13,500 feet. We did look at if there was a 20% reduction to single family and multifamily and a 15% reduction to SAR, we'd be around, I think it was 12,700 acre feet. So we are looking at how conservative is that 13,500. I think it's pretty conservative, especially if we have some setbacks because of the drought. So for the variable rate revenue, we budgeted at the 13.5. The fixed rate revenue, we have factored in the planned connections for Citro and Bonsall Oaks. And then for the rate increases, the spreadsheets you'll see in the upcoming slides include the 5% revenue adjustment as of July 1. Due to the delay in the detachment, we do have to do that year 2 of the 5-year plan, but I'll go into that in some future slides here. We've got all the staffing analysis changes in here, including the 2.25 additional positions. We've got a fuel increase of about 33%, along with a lot of other escalating operating costs. And we've also reestablished the training and travel budgets for departments. So you will see some increases on this budget over last year's budget. And then we're looking at costs for a wastewater cost of service study to add in here. So again, this was the stepped approach we're taking to get to the minimum board approved reserve levels by fiscal year 26. That includes the rate stabilization. This was the plan we had for 5 years to do the rate increases to get us up to that level. As we all know, the detachment is not going to happen in fiscal year 23, so I've updated this. This is what it looks like now. So we have our 9% we did last year, 5% this year. Then if detachment were to be successful in the next year, there'd be a rate reduction of 9%. So it just compounds those out years.
And then another 8%.
Yes. So as it's pushed out, it is unfortunate because we have continued to have the high wholesale water costs, but it does make that rate reduction potential a lot.
I think this
bigger.
is also something to where when our ratepayers were at the town hall meeting asking for speed in this determination is that the longer this thing takes, we have to plan for the worst. We are financially, we can't, and this district for many years would hope for development to come that never came and make financial bets on things that never came. We don't count capacity fees until we see dirt moving at a project. And we don't want to count on detachment until there's a commission vote. And this should have happened last year. The commission voted last year the way they were supposed to. We would have known where we were and this next rate increase wouldn't be needed. But the water authority, as we all know, is doing everything they can to stop us, but we still have to execute our CIP. The amount of overtime we're talking about in leaks and the emergencies, these pipes aren't going to get better with time. So we need to get on them. But this also highlights what basic penalty our ratepayers are facing because we're still in the water authority. and for no reason. And so hopefully LAFCO will get going and we get this thing approved, and next year we can give reduced rates to our folks and still meet the capital needs.
And this was a very responsible plan that the board passed last August to recover from those 3 years where we went with no rate increases. Oops, skipped a slide. So the wholesale water costs that are included in this budget include the calendar year 22 rates from the Water Authority. We don't have the calendar year 23 rates from them yet. Usually they come out in late May. We haven't seen anything yet. We haven't even seen much of a draft. So let me just add, when those do come through, the costs will be passed through with our January 2023 rate increase. We have that already approved in the 5-year rate increase plan that we will always pass through those increases in our wholesale water costs. So it's just a pie chart with our variable rate revenue by class. Not much change over the past few years, other than some people have moved from STAR to just regular ag. We're still about 66% ag overall. These are new items that we have that are in our operating budget, but they are capital items. So we like to just disclose what they are. We have looks like we're replacing 5 vehicles this year. We have a vehicle replacement plan in place now so that we're cognizant of ebbs and flows and how much, vehicles we have to replace each year. Because if we were to replace 10 vehicles this year, then when those ones all are worn out, we'd be replacing them at the same time. So we've done some smoothing on our vehicle replacement plan, also being cognizant of the state requirements for changing in vehicle standards.
Can you back up?
Yeah.
Say any of those electric?
Not yet, not yet.
You can't get them.
We're
so gonna get-
watching that.
One of the things here is that you recall that our Vector truck has been decommissioned by the California Air Resources Control Board. So we've been working with private contractors and in partnership with FPUD to use their truck, but we don't have one here that our staff can use. They've either got to beg to borrow one from Fallbrook or call on a private contractor who might be, the closest one is in Escondido, but otherwise down in San Diego. That's a trailer mounted generator that if there's something plugged, they're not gonna be able to do the full job. At least we can get out there and relieve a plug and then have somebody else later come in. And that's just a cheaper way to handle it. Because the new Vector trucks cost hundreds and hundreds.
$500,000.
$500,000.
That's
when
for
you
a,
start-
for a gently used one.
Yeah, gently used one. If you want a new one, they're like 3/4 to $1 million.
Yeah.
And so 40,000 to have that capacity and then contract for the full cleanup is the angle of attack.
And then the skid steer and trailers to use on those CIP projects, right, Robert?
Correct.
Is there any opportunity for interagency cooperation on this type of equipment?
I signed an agreement with Jack just for liability transfer, mainly for using the Vector. So we use theirs. But it's not for full-time maintenance. We're contracting that out. I think over time we will. There was a LAFCO component because Valley Center and Fallbrook do have an agreement where the Fallbrook does work in Valley Center, and LAFCO's looking at that right now. And because whether it needs to go to LAFCO for approval, I don't think it does, but I'm trying to see how that lands before we get too deep in it. We have one for just like kind of a backup, not for regular maintenance.
Fallbrook has 2 Vector trucks. They use them. So if we need to use one, we have to give them like 24 hours notice. And if it's available, then we can. If it's not, we have to call contractors, and we have 3 different contractors we can reach out to.
Okay.
So
But sometimes they're not available.
Right.
And when I tell all the guys, keep the people on the hills and water, keep the turds off the street, we all keep our jobs. When that's happening, we need to get on it right away. So that's the reason that 40,000 is in there, to have something to where we can not have to wait and watch.
Okay, this is a summary of all of our operating revenues and expenses. I'm going to go into detail on each of these water and wastewater funds in the next few slides, but you'll see we've got 3.8 million projected as an increase in net income for water this year. We have sold more than we expected. And then that was part of the plan in the 5 years to have funds to be able to transfer over to the capital plan. We're proposing 2.2 million for the budget this year for water. That was planned in the 5-year plan to be a bit higher, but as I said, there's been a lot of increases in costs. But through very careful review of the budget, we will still have enough to follow that 5-year plan and transfer that over. That is contingent on that 5% rate increase this year too. Wastewater, you see we have a loss projected for this year and budgeted for this next year. I expect to do a mid-year budget adjustment on wastewater after we do a cost of service study and change the rates. So this one is our general operating. This is paid for, this just shows a break even because it's paid for from water and wastewater, 50 or 82% out of water and 52% and 18% from wastewater. So you can see what some of these increases are for each department. We've got a slight increase for board of directors. That was just travel increases because you guys didn't travel for a couple of years. We've got the 33% increase in fuel for garage. Also, supplies costs went up quite a bit. Administration went down a little bit as far as what we're budgeting. We have a total of 1 million budgeted for professional services and legal, which is down a little bit from the prior year budget. We've got a slight increase on human resources. Some of that was the benefits for the full-time HR assistant, but a majority of it was actually also the travel expenses that we rebudgeted this year. Slight reduction in risk management for district claims. That's hopeful. We don't know what's going to come in for sure.
That's the JIPA benefit.
Right. It's also that. And then let's see, the IT is just up slightly. For subscript, is the fly getting you?
It's driving us.
I know.
Over here.
Send him over that way.
Finance, we have the grant position. We do hope that that pays off with the revenue that'll offset for grants that will be coming in, and also the travel. And then we had a customer service addition, position addition, and finally the last one for engineering, we've got that management analyst in there, and then we've changed the capital allocation percentage based on the analysis done with Carlene to make the allocations more in line with what actually is possible.
Is the grant position filled?
Yes,
Yes, Amelia is on it.
she's doing great. Okay, so for water operating,
Sorry, we're in attack mode over
And
here.
it's okay.
no one has got him yet either.
It's on your head.
It's still
It came and hit me in the eye while I was talking.
That door is open, so you know, you're gonna have an unlimited supply.
Oh.
Doors open.
Why's the front door open?
Fabulous. Okay, so here's our water operating. We are doing our projection based on 15,000 acre feet. So there's that 3.8 million, but then the last two columns compare to what the fiscal year 22 budget was. I think it's better to compare to the budget rather than what we're projecting for this year, because we are actually projecting a pretty good sales year. But again, in here, we've got an increase for utilities and equipment maintenance, went up pretty significantly. And then we had some position movement, and then, the general fund transfer was the largest part of the increase on this one.
Fuel costs have been crazy.
I was gonna say, fuel cost has a ripple effect on everything else.
Everything else.
So wastewater, this is where we need to do the cost of service increase. I believe it's been 12 years since we've increased wastewater rates, long before my time here. We've had an increase of line cleaning and equipment rental costs.
Yeah, that's due, thanks to the California Air Resources Control Board.
And now that we're doing a large project in wastewater, we need to be able to have funds to transfer over to the wastewater capital accounts to refund that account now that we're actually using the funds that were sitting in there for a few
Well,
years.
But I think some of these things, as we look going forward, the decision on whether to buy another Vector truck or keep on with the contracting for it will be a big one for us, because it's a huge capital expense, but it'll reduce some operating expenses because we're gonna have these consistent rentals. But I'm not sure that we have enough pipe to keep that iron moving. So that's where I think a cooperative effort with multiple agencies is probably the best way to go. But we have to see where LAFCO lands on that, or go ask for LAFCO's blessing, which I just don't want to do because I don't think it should be required.
Not
Is that a
yet.
bad precedent?
No. Yeah.
Yeah, they say it's about providing the service. I think the service, to my view, service vision is when somebody flushes their toilet, we collect the wastewater and we convey it to where it goes. How we go about cleaning the lines, whether I hire Roto-Rooter or Fallbrook, I don't bring my rotarator contracts to LAFCO, so why does my Colbert contract go to LAFCO?
Yeah.
The services, the collection and treatment and disposal of wastewater, how we go about it shouldn't be, I don't think so, but we'll see. That's in,
Ian involved in anything else.
well, he's doing what he's doing, so we're gonna wait and see.
These are all of our projected fiscal year 23 operating fund balances. So with that $3.8 million surplus that we're projecting for this year, we're going to start out fiscal year 22-23 July 1 with $2.7 million available in the water operating. We're budgeting a surplus of 2.2, almost 2.3 million. And then we have budgeted 2.5 million to be transferred to the capital plan, which we'll get to here in a few slides. Wastewater, we'll start out the year with about 800,000 in there. We have a loss, so there'll be no transfer to the wastewater capital unless we increase the rates and enough to do a transfer this year. So that is what's causing the immediate need for a wastewater cost of service study. And then we will have about 1.4 million in general operating, which is really close to the reserve that's required. So we are keeping all the required minimum reserves in here according to the 5-year plan, including getting the rate stabilization fund refunded or back up to the minimum fund level by fiscal year 26. You'll see there's an addition and a reduction to the new water sources fund. We get about 200,000 per year that goes in there. We actually have a capital project this year that we can use those funds for. So that 600,000 is a transfer over to the water capital fund, which you'll see in a couple of slides. And then our required debt service that we keep in the accounts for our debt service. Okay, so for our capital plan, again, these are contingent on transfers from the operating fund and from those rate increases. And we're forecasting 10.2 million in water and 19.4 million in wastewater over the 5 years. We've got our $10 million loan for the wholesale water efficiency projects. And we're also looking at grant opportunities, but nothing for grants has been factored in because nothing's guaranteed yet. Go to the next one. So this is our 5-year water capital plan. You can see fiscal year 22-23 will be starting out with about a little over 7 million, about 7.5 million in the beginning available balance. We've got that $2.5 million transfer that you saw a couple slides ago coming in from operating. 600,000 coming in from new water sources. Forecasted capacity fees of just over $1 million, which brings us to 11.7 million, and a spend of 7.3 million. So this is a little bit lower than what we would like to have as a minimum target balance. We like to have 1 year of the 5-year average. What we are building up to that with the rate increases. We have pushed out some of the year 2 through 5 projects, and we'll see why in a few slides. This, I realize you can't read this, but we're going to send this out to you in the packet after Chad presents it at the Budget and Finance Committee, and then we'll have it in the whole board packet to be approved. We're still finalizing those numbers. One thing, I'm going to go back to that because one thing I want to point out is that one project for the San Luis Rey imported return flow recovery is the one that where we can utilize those new water source funds. Okay, and then we've got the wholesale water efficiency projects. We'll be using that 10 million on these 5 projects here and have spent it by the end of fiscal year 24, tentatively. And then the wastewater fund. So this one was a little bit concerning because our funds go really low and into the negative. We've got 10.5 million coming from the CFD. We do have pooled cash, so all of our money that's in the bank for operating water capital and the wholesale water efficiencies are all in one account, but we still best practices is to have that minimum 1-year balance for 1-year average of the 5-year CIP in each of the 2 funds. So with the cost of service study that we're going to do, we'll work to get this back up to where it needs to be at the end of year 5. But in the interim, we'll be okay as far as cash flow goes.
And so none of these actually, take into consideration potential grant funding, correct?
That's correct.
So that's gravy if we get it.
Yep. We don't count our chickens before they hatch.
You also might notice in year 2 through 5, we've got a $500,000 plan to transfer from operating reserves. So we definitely need to get those rates up in order to produce a surplus so that that's possible. And that also factors in pushing out a lot of the wastewater projects to year 3 through 5, because we're focused on the lift station 1 project right now.
Maybe if some of those developments go faster, who knows?
So this is just a list of the wastewater capital projects, which I can give you guys a printout of if you'd like, but we're going to be presenting those in more detail at the next couple of meetings. So our recommendation is to continue on the path of the 5-year plan with the year 2 increase. We've already approved, the board's already approved those last August, so we could mail out the rate increase notice June 1, effective July 1, or we can wait, whatever the board's direction is there. But that increase will support the capital improvement program, the current contractual obligations that we have.
I think this isn't listed as an action item, so I
It-
think you have to wait. I don't know. I'd have to defer to council on that.
So
whether-
we already, it's not an action item, but it's was approved last August to do it each July 1. So looking for direction on if we should
Yeah,
send
on
it
the
up now.
218 process we did, it was listed there. Would that approval last July, where it showed this anticipated one be enough for Tracy? If the board were to conclude it, but there, that sentiment here by not taking action, would a previous action last July allow those rates to increase again this year, or were they? We'll have to take a look at that, but you know, the goal
Okay.
here would be
If
get
we
it
approved
approved with the
last
budget.
time, the board didn't take any action at all, or it could effectively go into place.
But,
You know, her question is, do we send out the letter now or wait until July?
right. Well,
That's-
whether the
that-
board needs to
that's
take
a
action in
statute,
June.
not a-
I'll check with, I'll send
Yeah,
that
you
over
work,
to you.
circle back with Alfred, make sure that's okay. As long as
Um,
we don't, I'm not seeing anybody going, well, no way, we're not gonna do it. Then if we already have the authority, then we can move forward. But just want to make sure we cross the Ts and dot the Is. 218 law firms love these sorts of things.
Okay, I'll run that through Alfred too. And then, you know, the rate increase this year too ensures operating capital reserves are at the minimum board approved levels.
So Tracy,
So we're
in
on
the-
track with that 5.
In any rate increase notice, you're gonna put your new chart showing what would have happened if,
Yeah, if you take
Absolutely.
action.
you know, we're gonna make clear that, hey, we had planned to give you a reduction this year, but still isn't done at LAFCO. Here's what, if, you know.
Yeah, I'd like to do that.
Well, I mean, it's the truth.
I
The
love
thing
it.
was supposed to be done.
Oh
I
my
mean,
God.
but
And that will give more motivation for people to go to, when LAFCO has it up for hearing, you know?
and not to put a stupid exit fee on it.
So that was the end. Did you guys have any questions? Direction? We do have some, you know, some constraints in the operating budget that we're very cognizant of, but we were able to implement all those staffing changes and stay on track with the 5-year plan we talked about last August.
How much interest rate increases operational costs have you factored in? In other words, we're running at what, 8% right now, but it's probably really 12% and may continue for another year or so.
The interest rate on our investments
Checking
or
on
on,
inflation.
Inflation. rate,
The
I'm sorry,
CPI?
oh, okay.
Wrong wrong words.
We've usually had between 3 and 4% in our cost of service studies.
But we may have to make some adjustments
Yeah.
as we go into this to take, because it's all broken out in great detail. Fuel. When's fuel gonna go back? You know, I don't know. Is it gonna be $7 a gallon? Geez Louise. It's hard
It
to
would-
fathom.
Yeah, we do need to determine what percent to use because we're going to do an update of the water cost of service study too. And
Yeah.
it's really easy just to put that in and see where it puts us.
Yeah, it's been pretty unprecedented here. Well, not unprecedented. 1984, let's say, two. It's been
Interest
harder.
rates on houses were 18%
Yeah.
then.
I've just,
Yeah, that's right.
I just hate to see us grossly underestimate what the cost impact might be as
Yeah.
a result of CPI change.
Well, yeah, we're watching things really closely, but I mean, I can't imagine doing more of a rate increase than we've already passed.
Well, we'd have to go back through 218.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not saying just the rate increase, just.
It's definitely something to monitor. We're, a lot of us, I know I am, that this whole craziness is a little spike, you know, and that it'll cut back down, but.
I mean, just want to replace the pool.
Oh, yeah.
$25,000.
Oh, just contractors.
And-
Or,
and that- that's if you can,
if you can get them.
if you can even get the contractor.
And
they're
killing us, it'll be September.
Yes,
Yeah, we had one where we put out proposals to get prices and just nobody responded.
yes.
Because they're like, we're too busy. That's too small. We're not going to deal with it. We had to talk to Alfred and said, yeah, well, then I was clear for a small project. That's, hey, and it's for backup power systems. It's like, we need it. This is an emergency. We got to move forward with it.
Yeah.
Well, there's, well, I mean, at a certain point,
Point, yeah.
you have to get it done. And if the private sector can't provide, then we have to. So that's what we're going to be bringing forward, the general outlines of it. We're hoping to get the water authority's numbers in sometime soon. We don't know. It's kind of crazy that we still don't have the final numbers. We'll find out Thursday. I don't know if they're going to give them to us at the board level either. So we'll see. But I think the one thing that I'm grateful to see here is the transfers from operating revenues into capital reserves, which is something that we've struggled for a
We
number of
did-
years to get there.
Yeah,
And we're
Couldn't do it.
finally there to where we can consistently do it, because that's the commitment of the board to deal with the pipeline problem. Because there were a lot of years where we made zero.
Yep.
You know,
And
and-
consciously because of the cost.
yeah, and so, but you know, the pipes ain't getting any younger. So we gotta get moving on those. Yeah, this was just an information item at this point. There's no action required.
Board action items. Consider approval of the Fourth Amendment to the unrecorded joint agreement to improve major subdivision, partial release of joint lien contract and partial termination, original holding agreement for San Diego tract number 4736-1, Division 1.
All right, Chad, you deal with this mouthful.
Yeah, I know. I know that
that.
the board thinks that, you know, we sit here and try and make these tongue twisters. We actually go back and forth with legal a lot on the actual title. I would like to take a moment and introduce David Pallinger. He is the developer for the Bonzo Oaks development and came in for the meeting. We didn't pull a speaker slip, so I didn't know if David, you wanted to say anything or if the board had any questions for him, but he is here. Happy to answer any questions if you have any. We actually wrote this as a consent calendar item because this is what staff considers housekeeping on our agreements. It's necessary as the developer moves through with their track and their development, and they are making arrangements not only with the district, in this case, it's with the County of San Diego, and they are going to be removing from a portion of their agreement lots 19 through 23. And so in that, the county then requires that all agreements be updated with this amendment. And so staff is asking that the board authorize option number 1, which essentially approves and authorizes our general manager to sign the necessary agreements, which allows Bonzo Oaks development to continue with their construction on phase 1A of their development. Yes,
Oh, yeah.
going back to
It's been around for a while.
1999.
Yeah, this
So-
one's been
so
around
it-
for a while.
So exactly what does that mean? Meaning, okay, they're removing these lots. Are they going to another phase of it or
Yeah.
what's happening? So-
Good question.
So what this does, Chad, if you would, it allows us to take first phase of residential development out of the lien contract, and then we'll replace that lien contract with a performance bond. So this is the first step to going to the bond. So now we'll go to the county and post our bond for those public improvements, water, sewer, storm drain.
Got it.
Does that mean the project's going faster or slower, or is this just?
Right.
Yeah.
That's a good question.
It's going. It's going. The district's been very cooperative in trying to help us resolve quite a few issues. So I really appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean, this project,
Um,
So this is more of a bookkeeping activity.
As
than it
is
to
strictly-
change your Plans.
Yeah, it's just a bookkeeping activity to allow us to substitute the lien contract with the bond.
Got it.
Okay.
And do you have my $415,000 I have to pay next week?
I think we're still waiting on it. Yeah, it's coming.
It's coming.
As you may recall, this is also the project where one of his contractors was causing the water hammer earlier in the year.
Yeah.
And we've been in communication with them, and they're working with their insurance company, and they expect to have that faded within 90 days, right? Yeah. An unfortunate situation, but
Any further discussion? Questions? Do I have a motion?
I move we accept option 1.
Moved by Director Moss, seconded by Director Stewart.
you can do a voice vote.
Voice vote. Yeah, guys, so it's been so long since we've. done
Yeah.
this. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? The
Unanimous.
unanimous voice for option one. Board member.
Sorry, you had to sit through the whole thing. there,
Dang,
yeah.
yeah, I started that.
Yeah.
Item number 23, board member requests for authorization to attend upcoming meetings or conferences or seminars.
I've already
None.
gotten mine approved, so I
Okay.
don't need to ask.
That's all right.
Board information items.
Well, while he's thinking, I have a question. Why do we always have to use Southwest?
You don't have
Alaska
to.
Airlines was actually cheaper than Southwest.
We don't always, we fly Alaska to Monterey. I know we. fly
No,
Alaska.
well, we flew, she's got me on Southwest to Oakland for the September.
That's probably the cheapest price, but I don't know.
No,
She's,
it wasn't, but,
oh, all right, I don't know. Well,
okay,
but
I'll ask her
yeah.
next
But
time.
she,
Oh, they might be using points or something. I don't know.
yeah, she
It might
had,
be
she
time.
had credits.
Oh, is that
Right.
why?
What happened was, I guess,
Because
we
I
were
hate
supposed to go to a
Southwest.
couple conferences last year, and because of the pandemic, they were canceled. So she was saying they didn't get money back, but they got.
Yeah,
credit.
Southwest gives you
Credit.
credit.
So
yeah.
I paid for the ticket on mine. I reimbursed the district the $274 for the one up in Lake Tahoe, and I took the credit on that. So what else was?
I don't know. Talk to Donna, but she's, her general instruction is get them there as cost effectively as you can.
Okay.
And I'm not sure, something else might have factored into it.
Okay, just curious.
Yeah, I don't know.
And I
We don't
do
have
believe-
any
I do believe there were Southwest credits.
there. I know there were because we had some
Yeah,
stuff
yeah.
right before the
My
pandemic.
ticket was paid by credit. She told me.
So that's how she goes about it.
On directives and meetings, there's no activity so far.
No, they're basically done.
They're defined.
Yeah, I mean, there's no one there, no one doing anything, so we're not putting it in. We've basically taken them off our list because there's nothing there.
It's still on the list.
Yeah, well,
Oh, it's on the master list.
oh, okay, yeah, sorry. I'll tell her to update that.
Anything else, Bill? Board information items, receive and file information and financial items.
I don't have anything to add here, but there's all the reports. If anybody has any questions.
Any questions, discussion? List of suggested items, agenda items for the next regular board meeting.
So with the budget adoption, we will have a presentation by Chad on the capital projects. So we'll go into that, each one that's budgeted.
Okay. The budget issues.
Yeah, next month it'll be capital projects and budgets will take quite a bit of time. Should be some other housekeeping. I don't know if you all saw the picture of our lift station under construction over there.
I thought it was very cool. I like the one with the tractor in the air.
That thing isn't going anywhere. There's a lot of concrete and steel in there.
If there are no other agenda item suggestions for next board meeting, we're adjourned at 2:48.
Thank you.
You should send me.
Perfect timing. I got a 3 o'clock meeting.
That's